Welcome to House of NIO, the podcast exploring innovations shaping the future of smart mobility. Today, we focus on how NIO's integration of cutting-edge API technology and connectivity makes EV ownership smarter and more cost-efficient. Joining us are Marius Keil, Lead Experience Manager Vehicle and Charging at NIO, and Henrik Loennechen, Head of Partnerships at Enode. They'll discuss how NIO's user-focused approach and seamless connectivity boost energy efficiency and support sustainability. Learn how NIO's software integration and innovations are redefining the future of mobility. Welcome to House of NIO.
Warm welcome from my side to House of NIO, and also welcome to you, Henrik. Nice to have you here today in Berlin.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure being here in person with you.
Yeah, pretty cool. So working on EV topics in NIO also means developing the EVs even further. And when we entered Norway, I think it was in 2021, that's a super interesting market because they have the highest EV adoption rate in the world. So I'm super curious what is going on in Norway, right?
Yeah, what's going on in Norway? Thank you for having me, Marius. Norway is a bit special, right? We have these high EV adoption rates. So even last year, we had almost 90% of new vehicles sold, passenger cars, were actually electric. And that's way higher than most other countries. And we had it for a while, actually. So meaning last year, we actually had more electric vehicles on the roads in total for passenger cars. So we passed that threshold. So we're seeing EVs all over Norway right now. So that's one part that is special. The other part is the energy market. It's a very, very competitive energy market. It was actually one of the first energy markets in Europe or worldwide to open up for a competition. So all the energy retailers are kind of competing for the end users. And when you bridge those two together, with energy prices going up, very competitive offerings, we saw that the energy companies really wanted to be able to connect to these EVs. Charge them maybe cheaply for consumers. So that's what we saw in Norway and why we ended up founding Enode actually as a software company to make it very easy for energy companies to then connect to these EVs like NIOs.
That may be also the challenge for us as a global OEM entering Europe. Our cars are pretty competitive, very good, fitting the market well. But we might have touched on that already beforehand, the NIO Smart Charging, something that we introduced roughly 1.5, 2 years ago, something that I also talked about in the first season of House of NIO. So I was able to give some insights already. And what we have done there for our NIO users is that they could set up the preferred time of leaving, usually in the morning, in the vehicle settings, or they could also use the NIO app to set it up. And the first partner company that we had was Tibber, a well-known energy company, which is providing dynamic energy tariffs. And that enables our users already today to save up to 30% of electricity cost for the vehicle when it comes to home charging. So if you consider my job, right, I'm responsible for creating great product parts within the domain of driving and charging. So we want to make sure that public charging works well. We also make sure, and that's a unique feature about NIO, we can also do the battery swap. So if you are traveling, for example, we would replace the battery and save a lot of charging time, right? That's also super cool. But home charging seems to be the most common use case for our European users. And that's why we wanted to make sure it works well, but that they can also save some money on that electricity bill. So could you give me some insights how you see that? And I think we have also chosen you because you are or your company Enode is that well known in the market with a lot of companies, right?
Exactly, and bringing that back to what we discussed earlier, right? The competitive energy business in Norway. Tibber and NIO creating smart charging is fantastic and reduce cost for home charging. But then it's only limited to Tibber consumers, right? Buy their energy from Tibber. What about all the other energy companies competing, wanting to also offer smart charging, right? So I imagine there was a long line of companies wanting to integrate with NIO. But it's it's quite a lot of effort actually building those kind of connections. I'm sure you can attest to that. So that's essentially what we solve as Enode, right? If you imagine being Tibber and then building a connection to NIO, but then also all the other EV brands, because you have other Tibber customers with other, not buying a NIO. So there's all these connections an energy company must make with all the different EV brands. And for NIO, all the connections to all these energy companies, it's just a lot of connections and lots of waste, frankly, because it's the same connections being made. So that's what we solve with Enode, right? Being the central party in the middle. Energy companies connect with us, and we connect then with the likes of NIO. So for you, connecting with us, you would have access then to the more than 100 energy companies already done that work. You're giving smart charging to all these other companies also beyond Tibber in a very scalable way. That's essentially the problem we are solving and benefiting, I guess, all NIO owners, regardless of whether you're a Tibber customer or you prefer some other energy company.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it's in the end about the users. We want to make sure that they have a great experience. And what I can see so far is that we have opened fairly quickly to these local heroes. So I can see the market in a way that we provide the vehicles and they all work in all the markets. But this market of home appliances, energy contracts, that is something that is very different in the countries. And in Norway, that's like everyone has a dynamic energy tariff all set. When I talk to friends or family in Germany, many of them are used to having fixed prices. So they are even asking, why does it make sense from a user perspective to not charge at 6 p.m. when coming home, but to charge in the night? Because the first entry point in that saving cost in home charging is having that electricity tariff. And I can see now also in Germany that players like E.ON and others are offering that and making it available for our users. And that brings us then into the situation, as you described, we would need to connect to many companies. And our philosophy in the experience, we are fairly quick in developing stuff. But we also came across the testing. I think we showed that we can be quick in there. But the testing that we've done was necessary. On the one hand, for us as a company, that we could provide something reliable to our users. But I'm also happy now that you can help us to be available to multiple energy companies with the same, let's say, quality or experience.
Exactly, and that allows you to focus on building great vehicles and great software, right? And also the energy companies, instead of building all these integrations or connections, if you will, they can focus on building great apps and great energy tariffs benefiting the end user. So it's a win-win, making this connectivity very, very easy.
Yeah. And having these insights, I remember from the NIO Smart Charging, we have an easy interface for them, but we don't show, let's say, the advantages right away or energy cost. That's why being now connected to energy companies is key for us. And what I also want to emphasize, we talk about the energy market, right? How can EVs contribute in the energy market? How can we make sure that they are connected perfectly so that users can save money? And we can also do something about the environment, because usually the cheaper energy is also more eco-friendly, right? That comes along with it. But what I want to emphasize here, energy, one big topic for NIO in the connectivity part. But I could also see that if NIO users might use their vehicle outside the private, also for the business area, that we connect there. And you have helped us to build the API in a way to be attractive to any potential company working in these use cases of operating fleet vehicles or even creating trip reports. So what I also saw in the user feedback, people were asking NIO to connect to companies like Tronity. So they enable EV drivers to get some insights. What was the vehicle consumption? But it also enables them now to create automated trip reports for tax reasons. They could share easily how much the vehicle was used for business and how much for private. So I think we set a good first step. Yeah, NIO opening that API, making it now accessible for many use cases. One big use case is energy, but I'm also looking forward to other opportunities coming up. And now I think the only limit is the imagination of other companies, right? Such as you are working on that energy topic to see more use cases, more ideas coming for the future. So what is also super important for us in NIO is the partnership. When we do something in the market and we set up everything, we want to make sure that it's also smooth for our users. So maybe you could share with us or with the listeners now how we found each other in the market. Yeah.
Absolutely. So back to the smart charging with Tibber starting point, right? We're working with a lot of other energy companies, and I said consumers are starting to ask for NIO support in other apps, not just the Tibber app, but in the Fjordkraft app and the Eon app, right? So we actually approached you and said, we're hearing people want to connect their NIOs. And I think you also heard the same from your end user focus and the feedback you are capturing, right? We want to be supported in more apps here, and Enode is the way to do that. So we had an initial meeting discussing that and quickly figured out that we're trying to solve the same challenge there. So it was a pleasure then teaming up with you and the team. I think also when we're a software company, we're a startup, scale up still, 50, 60 people. And sometimes working with the automotive OEMs is a daunting task. It takes quite a lot of time. It's quite rigorous. But with NIO, I got more of the sort of startup vibe again, in a good sense, moving very quickly. And one example, we got to borrow a test vehicle in Oslo, right? And we were heads down in the testing, and then we figured out we needed more models to test this properly. And with other OEMs, that might take some weeks, get some kind of new vehicle, maybe like a budget approval. With NIO, the local team just said, hey, you can use our. And then we had 3 more models from the actual NIO employees that same night. It's kind of really shortening the time, and that's how we love to work. And it's a pleasure that when the OEMs can follow up, I think, in the same kind of speed.
Yeah, absolutely. That also drives us. We want to make sure that the experience is good for the users, and users give the feedback either via the NIO app. They could send us like a message, but they could also use the AI in-car assistant Nomi. They could just say, hey, Nomi, I want to give feedback. And there we learned about that API topic. Some users even mention it explicitly. Some were more generic, saying, hey, I don't have a Tibber contract here. I have something else. I want to connect to that. I want to participate to save some money. That's what is in for the users in the end. And that we wanted to solve quickly. And I think we both companies have shown that they were fully into it and getting each piece together that we could connect via that API. And talking API, we might also want to explain what it actually means, because from user perspective, it's super simple, but technically, maybe you want to give us some insights how that works from an automotive OEM to energy companies.
Absolutely. So an API, that's an application programming interface, is an abbreviation, is essentially the language you would speak when connecting to the NIO, right? So we need some way of talking to the actual NIO. So when we sit together and say we need to co-develop this API, we need to agree on the language we're talking, where we say we want to start charging or stop charging. What does that actually look like, that language? That's the business we are in as a software company, making that language very simple for energy companies. So it's easy for them to then talk to NIOs and other types of vehicles. And that's essentially what we created together, right? This simple energy language, if you will. That's APIs in short.
Pretty cool. And I also remember our developers working with your developers. They went deep into it. Absolutely. They figured it out. And now we are speaking the same language and making it easy. Yeah,
exactly.
And as the technical base was done, like server to server communication, when I talk internally or even to friends saying, well, what we are doing, everybody's asking the same question. Okay, how can I use it? What do I need to set it up? And besides being easy, we need to understand that we have the NIO app that exists already for controlling the vehicle. But if we have, for example, a user in Norway now owning a NIO vehicle and having a Fjordcraft electricity contract,
Exactly.
they need to be connected somehow, right? And everybody is like, how to do it? I think the user journey is the same for all these solutions that you have created. Maybe you can summarize how it will look like for the user.
Absolutely. So for us, it starts then in the app you have with your energy company, where it says, okay, you want to do smart charging and then save up to, say, 30% of charging costs. We as an energy company need to control when you charge, and this is how we do it. So very practically, you typically click, I want to connect my EV, and say, I want to connect my NIO, and you log in with your NIO account. And then you get an explanation saying, this is what we're doing, this is the data, this is the controls. Click, yes, I want to connect, and the connection is made. So it's pretty tricky in the background. That's all what we figured out. But for the user, essentially logging in, saying, yes, I want to connect my EV. And that's about it. Then it's up to the energy company to start charging your EV whenever it's low energy prices and share that back with you.
Yeah, indeed. And I think there we have a good transparency. So what we are doing as soon as the energy app opens the NIO login page, we also show our users, for transparency reason, what kind of data will be shared. That location data is needed to make sure the smart charging only happens when they are at home, right, and not somewhere else. And also that companies like your partners then are able to start and stop the charging process of the vehicle. I think that something is super important. Also giving transparency, what will happen with that certain data and the controls that energy companies get on the users' EVs.
Absolutely. So there's transparency when you link and say what's going on, who will access my data, but also transparency when you as an end user see, okay, when will my EV actually charge today? You want to see some kind of plan saying, okay, it's actually going to charge over midnight, as an example, and it's going to be ready the next morning. So keeping the end user informed all throughout the process, also when you do the charging, that is super important.
Yeah.
See happy end users, which we all want to have.
Cool. So we can remember just setting up once, opening the energy app, logging in with the NIO credentials.
Exactly.
Then the device is connected. And afterwards, whenever our users want to have insights, when is the next charging session planned? How much did they save already in that particular month, for example? How much was the consumption of the NIO vehicle in the actual household, all done in the certain energy apps, right?
Exactly.
Very visible
Exactly.
to our users. Yeah.
Thanks to this API, right, where we get that data and the controls with the NIO.
Pretty cool. And what is also key for us, we have that freedom of use. So users could now decide for basically any electricity company or energy provider to set it up, but providing that smart electric vehicle to end users also means we have other use cases that we want to cover. So we have users who use their vehicle partially for private trips, but maybe also for business. And especially in Germany, tax are always a big thing. And users want to have tax compliant reports where they drove, how much energy was used, so that they could hand it in easily. And also here, I believe we have found a good set of data points or attributes that we are sharing to the partner companies so that we enable more use cases. And the second one, I remember, fleet customers who are running multiple brands. With the NIO app alone, you could not manage multiple brands, same as for other car manufacturers. They all provide access to one particular vehicle. But if you imagine being a company running 100 vehicles of different brands, they might have another professional solution. And we have created the first big milestone, publishing the API, testing it together. But we are also very open to other solutions integrating now the NIO vehicles.
That's exactly the point of this API, right? Make it available to other companies to innovate and create solutions on top of that. And that's partly energy and partly fleet and other use cases. It all benefits the end user at the end of the day, right, with this competition.
Pretty cool. So NIO vehicles are connected to energy companies. NIO users can fully participate. NIO users have to set it up only once and then saving money on their electricity bill. And what I think I can also share here, NIO has one competitive advantage over the others. And one topic that makes NIO vehicles so interesting is that we can charge at home. So the topic we just discussed, but also when it comes to public charging or long trip driving with an EV, we make sure that DC charging is fast and reliable, but we also offer the power swap, which means the vehicle would drive into a power swap station, looks like a garage, vehicle drives in automatically. We replace the battery, the empty one, by a nearly full one, and the users can drive off all within 5 minutes. And that's outstanding in the market. It's well adapted, and our users also love that functionality. So I hope that also in this domain outside the home charging, we can see more stuff going on in the future. And also price-wise, I think that's super attractive. I have the numbers in my mind for Germany. So maybe we use that example. Usually in a household, you would pay 30 cents per kilowatt hour, and public charging might be much more expensive. But if our NIO users go into the power swap station, replacing the batteries, they would pay only 39 cents per kilowatt hour doing the charging in there. So it is fast and also super cheap for public charging. Also quite cool.
So then you have two good alternatives, right? You just launched smart charging, cheap home charging for residential, and then you can also swap your battery for a cheap price, I guess, whenever you need to do a longer trip or don't have the time to charge at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So cheap for users. And what we also shouldn't forget is the electricity grid. So with the power swap station, as soon as the returned battery is in the station, it will also be recharged basically on a lower rate than you would do typically in public fast charging. And we can also shift the hours of charging in the power swap station slightly to the cheaper prices, also supporting the grids. Also there, I think a lot of use cases will arrive in the future, and we can still optimize further. That's all about optimization. Users should be able to use their car however they like, but together we can build more use cases and optimize even further for them, saving money, being more eco-friendly. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what we value with NIO also, putting these end users first all the time. With developing good APIs, good smart charging functionality, but then it seems to be like a red thread for NIO, not only when it comes to charging, but the entire end user experience.
Yeah. So users are key for us. We want to make sure the user experience is right. We focus on the user feedback that we receive, and we consider what can we develop, what can we do to solve the problems, how can we make it easier for them. And the cool thing with NIO is that we also put the software out over the air. We call that FOTA, firmware over the air. So users can benefit of owning that NIO vehicle and receiving new features, improvements, so the NIO vehicle gets better over time. Also feels kind of unique in the car market. Yeah. What is also super important for us as NIO is the future in Europe, future worldwide. What can we do with our EVs? And one concept that comes along that I can also read in the user feedback quite often is bidirectional charging, meaning the vehicle could not only receive energy while charging, but it could also give energy back, for example, to the house directly or towards the energy grid to stabilize it and to support it. However, the market also needs to be ready for it. All the players need to adapt, EVs need to adapt. So I'm wondering, what else will happen in the energy market besides bidirectional charging? What can we see in the near future? What can NIO users and other EV drivers participate in, and what to expect?
Exactly. I think bidirectional charging will be important, and you have the foundation in place now with working with these energy companies. But there's much more going on until we have all the EVs on the road will do bidirectional charging. So we see in general competition really heating up in the energy markets. EV owners are very attractive energy customers, right? You use more energy. Typically, that's the kind of customer profile that you really want as an energy company. And we see now with the connectivity, all the energy companies are now battling out to create the best possible end user experience. That's the best app, the best way to control the vehicle, but obviously also the biggest savings, right? I think it's a very good trend for end users with these energy companies battling out, and frankly, some of them are losing money by passing so much back to the end user. That's a dynamic that we like to see, valuing end users. So that's only going to continue, I think, going forward, and also going beyond just the Nordics and Europe, but worldwide at some point also.
Yeah, I remember the footprint of your company is also pretty big in the world. So happy to see more topics going on there. But I think now it's really time to wrap it up. So thank you for being here today in Berlin. Thank you for providing some insights.
Been a pleasure. I really appreciate working with you, Marius, and the team when we did the hands-on testing in Oslo. And NIO is an important partner to us. So a pleasure coming to Berlin, seeing you more in person, and then looking forward to taking this even further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marius and Henrik, for the great insights. Stay tuned for the next episode on YouTube and Spotify. House of NIO, a NIO podcast.